Right, well, welcome this evening. I have the great pleasure of continuing the Ayurveda Cafe with Jim Pace. This evening, Jim is going to discuss the Shaka Vansya Ayurveda definition and understanding of Marma. Marma are the subtle energy points in the body, the vibrational switches or outlets through which we can immediately access and enliven the flow of prana for balancing and healing the body and mind. Jim will also include details in Vaidya Mishra's Transdermal Marma System, TMS. This unique therapy combines the understanding and application of Marma Therapy, sound therapy, transdermal herbal creams, touch therapy, and aromatherapy synergistically used for maximum effectiveness. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me once again, Noreen. And thank you, whoever's watching, for coming in to learn some very wonderful knowledge from the Shaka Vansya Ayurveda tradition. And last week, in the beauty discussion, I talked a little bit about how we enliven beauty, at least in part how we enliven beauty through Marma Therapy on the face. Well, Marma Therapy, we touched on the face as well as some other points. But in fact, I did speak a little bit about Marma in some of the other talks, but not in much detail. So tonight is a good time to elaborate more about what Marma are, what they can do, the history of, we could say, their discovery, and a little bit, just a lot more knowledge, actually, to give you an idea of the power of these subtle energy points on the body and their implications for our health and how they're involved in health and disease, actually. So we're going to discuss Marma and Marma Therapy in a lot more detail. And we'll start by defining what a Marma is. The plural of Marma is Marmani, but I always just use Marma to make it easy. And after we find out what a Marma is and what they do and all those sort of details, then I'll talk about Vaidya Mishra's unique contribution to the science of Marma Therapy, which, as Noreen just mentioned, is called the Transdermal Marma System, which is a Marma Therapy protocols for overall well-being and managing specific imbalances. Let me just say, Marma Therapy is a very, very big topic, and I waited until today to start putting my notes together, my speaker's notes, and I got a little bit overwhelmed because I have a lot of information on Marma. Vaidya Mishra has been teaching Marma in the USA since about 2003, 2004. And I've attended many of those workshops, assisted him in teaching those workshops. And so I have a lot of material, and I got a little bit overwhelmed sorting through it to select the points that are the most important and to make it simple, but not to make it too simple. You know, anything in Ayurveda can be spoken about very simply, or it can be a little bit overwhelming for first time. So I'm trying to find that golden mean point.
Jim, not to interrupt, but we can also continue if you find when you start speaking about it that you really want to go deeper in any of the specifics. We can certainly continue next week on,
Okay, we'll see how far.
in more depth on any particular element that you think is important.
I think we'll probably, I hope we get through this, and if not, we'll continue. So
Okay.
first off is, what are Marma? Well, the word Marma is very simple. It means mystical. It means secret. In fact, this knowledge of Marma was kept secret by many Marma practitioners in the history of India. But that's another story about the history of the Marma Therapy and the people who used it. But in another way, we can say that Marma are points on the body. We can locate them physically. Um, and they are like, Vaidya Mishra calls them switches. They're like a switch, we could say, a vibrational switch that can turn on, as it were, and enliven pranic energy in the physiology, in the heart, in the mind, the emotions, the senses, everywhere, in order to bring more vitality, in order to balance the doshas, and also to increase the coordination between the body, the mind, the heart, and the soul. We've already discussed the soul and the light of the soul. So if you do Marma therapy correctly, it's not like taking an herb or some diet or routine or something of that nature, where it might take, a longer period of time to see an effect. Marma therapy can produce an immediate balancing effect at all different levels: heart, mind, body, consciousness. So to reiterate, in a general sense, Marma points, these points on the body, are where prana, we discussed what prana is, that nurturing, creative, it creates everything. Prana is, so creates and supports our life. These are points where prana is more active, more accessible, easily accessed by a Marma practitioner. And the name was given by this great Rishi, Maharishi Sushruta, who was an Ayurvedic surgeon about first millennia BC. He noticed that certain points on the body had very unique powers. He had to know about these points because he was a surgeon, and you don't want to damage the marma, which we'll talk about how they can be damaged. So he noticed that there were certain points with unique powers, and he studied them in detail, but he realized they were far too mystical for anyone to understand them in their totality. To caution and to challenge future practitioners, Sushruta called these points marma, which means mystical. He recognized 107 marma throughout the body, starting from the top of the head to the toes. And then he classified marma based upon their structure, their location, their size, and the consequences of injuring them, which could be either by trauma. A martial artist can do a lot of damage by hitting the right marma at the right, the exact place without even using a lot of force, because they're very delicate. You can disrupt the flow of prana and really hurt somebody. And there were practitioners in India that knew the secret of these marmas for combat, and they kept those secrets closely guarded in their type of martial arts. So they were classified based on their structure, their location, their size, and the consequences of damage by trauma, by metabolic imbalances from poor digestion, poor metabolism at the tissue level, cellular level, toxins from inside or outside, and surgical error. Again, he was a surgeon, so he had to take very special care not to damage marma. In Vaidya Mishra's lineage, they recognize these 107 marma, but also in the Shaka Vansya Ayurveda lineage, they recognize and offer therapeutic procedures for 27 additional marmas on the spine. Vaidya Mishra calls them spinal marmas. And he said that there are no classical texts that mention or discuss the spinal marmas, and that this aspect, the contribution of his lineage, is indeed exclusive to the Shaka Vansya Ayurveda lineage. So, to summarize, even at this early juncture in our talk, Marma means mystical. They are the subtle juncture points between consciousness and the physiology. Switches on the body activated by touch, through which we are able to support the optimal reception, flow, delivery, and coordination of prana. And also release used prana. We use prana, we have to release it. So Marma, if we don't release the used prana, they're in the vibrational channels, and they slow down the circulation of prana in the vibrational channels. So we're always releasing used prana. We should be releasing used prana, but there are factors that inhibit that. But Marma Therapy also helps release used prana. And so let's go a little bit deeper in the definition. Marma are subtle juncture points between an individual's consciousness, which we talked about as the light of the soul, and their physiology, as well as the mind and the senses. These marma they're like transformative pranic juncture points, where the nadis, we talked about a nadi as a pranic delivery system happens through the vibrational channels. Although you can't see them, but they're like a vibrational channel, not a physical channel. So these are where the point, at any point, any marma point, this is where the pranic energy, we talked about Soma, Agni, and Marut, they all intersect at the marma point. There's a Soma Nadi, there's an Agni Nadi, there's a Marut Nadi, and these points are where they come together, like an intersection, a juncture, they converge at that point. And what it tells us is this relationship of Soma, Agni, Marut to these points, because Soma, Agni, Marut are going all over the physiology to sustain our life, they create the dosha, they create the elements. So it tells us that depending on how well our marma are functioning, how well they are working, to that extent, how they determine how healthy we are. So the marma, I'll get to that in a moment, but the marma work all the time. They're autonomous, but they get damaged. But they're always working. Some working fantastic, some working less fantastic of the 107 marma and the 27 spinal marma. But basically, they govern the flow of prana. These marmas are like the switches that govern the flow of prana to every organ and system, every atom, every molecule, the entire cellular system. The marma are governing that distribution of prana. The nadis are delivering the prana, and the nadis intersect at the marma. So the marma are governing that flow of prana. And each of these marmas, as well as the 27 spinal marmas of the SVA lineage, they all have their own individual distinct functions. They have specific functions. But overall, what marma do, they act like an energetic circuit breaker. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But what we should note is that we locate marma on the physiology, on the body itself, but the marma really, they're not physical. They're non-physical. We can access them on the physiology, but the marma themselves are non-physical. Because only when prana is active within the marma can we say a marma even exists. A lifeless body, a dead body, has no marma. You can touch the area where that marma, is described to exist, but if a person's not alive and you touch the Marma, that area, there is no more Marma because there's no more connection to the light of the soul where these Marma are activating or operating from. They're operating at that deep level from the light of the soul. And so you could touch the Marma as much as you want in any way you want. Nothing will happen because there's no more life there. Prana, Marma is a carrier of life. So they don't exist except in the living body, even though we access them on the physical tissues, physical points of the body. So if hopefully I haven't confused anyone yet. You're following along at least for the most part. So I'd like to use an analogy to help us understand of comparing prana to electricity. Let's say that prana is like electric current. In which case, if we want to use that analogy, we can think of Marma as a circuit breaker, which is these circuit breakers are capable of directing different ratios of prana, which means different ratios of soma, agni, and marut to different parts of the body. Our body, there's some organs that need a lot of agni, such as the liver. There are some organs that need a lot of soma, such as the kidneys and the stomach. So this ratio of pranic delivery to different parts of the body is not the same. Same prana, but different components. Because the body has physiology, every different area has different needs. Eyes have more agni, they need more fire to see. So again, we'll go back to this electric circuit analogy, and prana, the life force, is electricity. So electricity, for the most part, flows into a building by one cable. One major cable comes into your home, one main cable, and then that electricity from that one cable will get distributed to various parts of the building, various parts of your home, to various appliances, to the refrigerator, to the microwave. Hopefully you don't have a microwave. We'll talk about that one day. To the computer, to the lights, to any kind of appliance, but it all came in from the one cable, but yet we know these different appliances all do different things. They don't do the same thing. So one circuit breaker in your home may govern a bedroom, another governs the kitchen, and another governs the central heating and air conditioning. And others govern the landline, whatever you have. So it's like that. The analogy is like that. So Marma function like a circuit breaker, directing different ratios of agni, soma, marut, the components of prana, to different parts of the body. They orchestrate, and they direct, and they govern the delivery of prana to our lungs, to our reproductive organs, to our stomach, to our brain, to our cellular system, and as Vaidya Mishra would say, to every macro and micro molecule. That's what the Marma are doing. So one analogy is like a circuit breaker, doing everything where all the pranic energy goes automatically. And another analogy, we can consider Marma to be like a switch or an outlet, like an electrical outlet on the body. And with these switches or with these outlets, depends on, I like to use both analogies, but we can think of them either as a switch or an outlet. If we know how to activate them, know how to touch them in the proper way, then we can, especially in a proper way as taught in the Transdermal Marma system, which I'll tell you more about that shortly. If we know how to touch them in that proper way, as Vaidya Mishra taught, then we can use the Marma therapy for our own benefit. We can do Marma therapy on ourselves to some extent. We can use the Marma for daily self-care. And if we have a healing practice, then we can also learn the deeper Marma therapy so we can support our patients, our clients, through Marma Therapy. For those people who are, licensed in some sort of health profession, they can add that to their existing work to complement that. So once again, these marmas, they work autonomously. We don't have to do anything to make them work. We have to take care of the marma. Yes, we have to take care of them and support them and not damage them, but innately they work automatically, autonomously. And they should work flawlessly without any problems. But that is rarely the case, especially in the modern times with the electromagnetic frequencies, which damage the marma and the vibrational channels. But in general, these marmas can be damaged, and they can be damaged by our thought processes, our emotional processes. They can be damaged by toxins generated from poor digestion, either at the level of the stomach and small intestines or liver, the tissues, or even at the cellular level. And they can definitely be damaged by what we talked about, the Garvisha, the external toxins that come from pesticides, herbicides, chemicals, and anything the body should never take in. All these exogenous sort of toxins, fumes, et cetera, heavy metals, all these things can also damage the marma. And today's age of electromagnetic pollution is a big marma damager. It damages the marmas very quickly, especially the facial marmas, because the face is normally not covered, whereas our body, we wear natural clothing like real cotton and silk and raw silk and wool. We can protect our body marmas from EMF to some extent. But even then, the spine carries a lot of pranic energy. So even then, other marmas will get affected in a negative way by the EMF. The nadis will get impacted, won't be able to carry as much prana as efficiently. So I'm going to go back to another analogy to help us understand a little bit more. Let's say, help us understand how the marma can be damaged and why it's important to take care of them. Let's say you own the very best. This is Vaidya Mishra's analogy, by the way, not mine, but I'm going to use his. He says, let's suppose you own in your home, you have the best appliances money can buy, and you're really careful about taking care of those appliances. You always get them serviced on time by a factory trained technician. And so in your mind, everything is good. I'm taking care of my appliances. And the guy comes in, he looks at the parts, and everything's working great. But perhaps all is fine until one fine day, everything comes crashing down. And you wonder why. Well, it could be that the technicians, the experts, maybe they consider themselves experts, but they, in all those years of taking care of your appliances, maybe they never bothered to check and clean the switches. They were taking care of the hardware, the physical machinery, but they weren't taking care of that more subtle aspect, or the switches. Because any imbalance in an electrical switch, dust, moisture, faulty wiring, all these things can cause short circuits, right? In a sense, then, our marma are like that. A lot of times, and I'm going to give you two examples from my own experience. A lot of times we think of our body as purely material. But again, for many of you, I think most of you out there listening know that we're not purely material. We're made of bundles of vibrations. And prana is what keeps us alive and created us. But those switches, these marmas, we have to take care of them, because if they get damaged, it means less prana is going to some organ or system, whatever that organ is. Any organ that has a problem, any system that has a problem means there's less prana there. There's less flow of prana. Otherwise, it's not going to go out of balance. There's no weak spot for imbalances to go to because there's plenty of pranic energy to keep things in order. So we don't take care of the switch. If we take care of the switches, it'll go a long way to taking care of the physical body, the actual matter of the body will function properly and have the proper quality and proper quantity and all that. I had a guy, I do Marma Therapy also, and I have had a gentleman, IT worker, a lot of computers, came to see me in New Jersey, where I used to live, and he laid on the table. He said, I have like a frozen shoulder. I can barely, get my arm up some days. I can just barely move it. First thing that came to my mind, I asked him and said, do you have a computer very close to your shoulder next to your bed that's turned on? He said, I do, like maybe 6 inches away from the edge of the bed where I sleep. And I leave it on all night. And I said, okay. So I gave him a certain, I worked on certain Marma. And afterwards, he started moving his arm up. And he said, oh, it's like 75% better. And I said, wow. And I was surprised. I was surprised too. And he was very happy that his arm was working well. So again, there was nothing physically damaging his muscles, his tendon, his ligaments. There was no damage there. There was no MRI is not going to show any damage. It was a vibrational problem. The energy wasn't there to help him, his mind and brain, to command that arm to move the way he wanted it to. It was vibrational. So of course I told him, remove the cause, turn off all your electrical appliances in your bedroom, especially that computer you have next to you. Just move it away. Don't have it there. I didn't see him again after that, so I don't know how things turned out, but it was remarkable to see that change. And another time, I gave a Marma workshop in Pennsylvania at a yoga studio, and I had about 30 students. One lady came all the way from Manhattan. She took a bus for like 2 hours, and that night, she arrived the night before, and she was late to class because she had fallen in the dark at some new place, didn't know how to get in the house where she was staying, and hurt her knee and had to go see someone in the emergency room that morning. But she came to class late, and I thought, I'm going to do a facial Marma demonstration for her, on her. She'll be my facial Marma client. It'll make her feel better and look better, but make her happier. She got hurt, but she went to all that trouble to come out here. Let's let her be the demo, right? 45 minutes later, she got off the table. Again, keep in mind, this is a facial Marma for beauty. She got off the table, and first thing she did, she starts moving her knees up and down real fast. And of course, I asked her how she felt, and then I said, well, because I'm looking at the beauty part of it, right? And I said, well, why are you doing your knee like that? She said, before I got on the table, I couldn't do that. See, Marmas are connected all over. Even these facial Marmas have correspondence to different parts of the body. And I did other type of Marma before that are more general, not just the facial. So we increased the flow of prana to her leg, to her knee. She had more energy there in her leg and knee from something that a therapy I did that but again, Marma, what does it mean? Mystical. We don't know everything about them, what they can do. That's how powerful they are, because they're mystical. And that was her experience, that her knee she was able to move her knee much better after the facial, getting those facial Marmas. But it's the same is true for our whole physiology. Supporting our Marma with Marma therapy and not damaging them also through our proper diet and lifestyle and EMF countermeasures, all those sort of things will support our overall health and well-being. Not just physically, but also our emotional well-being and our mental well-being. So I'm going to go now a little bit deeper into the, I don't want to run out of time. How much time would you say I have left to talk?
Oh, I'd say about 10 more minutes, Jim.
Oh, okay. So one of the great Ayurvedic physicians whose work is known as Bhav Prakash, his name was Bhav Mishra, just as Vaidya Mishra. He was Bhav Mishra. He says, in the Marma, Prana lives. Prana is established in the Marma. So the Marma are triangular intersection points of energy, of prana, soma, agni, and marut, which influences the doshas, the semi-vibrational doshas, vata, pitta, and kapha. Although of the three semi-vibrational dosha, not pure vibration, vata is the closest to being pure vibration, but they're all semi-vibrational, these dosha. And they govern our physiology. They have the physical, they govern about, at the end point, we can say vata, pitta, kapha govern our body, but they are governed by soma, agni, and marut. But because the source of vata, pitta, kapha is soma, agni, and marut, for marut for vata, agni for pitta, and soma for kapha, these pranic energies ultimately influence the pacification or balancing. We call it pacification, shamana, the pacification or the aggravation of the three dosha, vata, pitta, kapha. The governing factors of prana, soma, agni, and marut, they govern whether the doshas are getting aggravated or pacified. And quite interestingly, it's even deeper than that, because again, these marmas are connected with the light of our soul. They're a juncture point there with an effect on the outside. And so the marma points are also the junctions of the three gunas: sattva, the principle of clarity and light; rajas, the principle of change, motion, turbulence, activity; and tamas, or darkness, the lack of light. So the marma points are also the junctions of the sattva, rajas, and tamas, the three gunas that govern the evolution of all of creation. So I want to introduce a very interesting term that I would be surprised if anyone here has ever heard it, but that term is called Bhut Atma. Bhut Atma is a combination of the Jivatma and the Paramatma, the individual soul and the universal soul. And in that combination of the Bhut Atma, the combination of the individual soul and the universal soul, cosmic soul, every marma in every marma, there is a flow of soma, agni, and marut. The three nadis are together at the points. And that's a marma, where that soma nadi, that marut nadi vibrational channel, and the agni carrying channel, agni nadi, that's where they converge, that's where they meet. And they're all connected at the Bhut Atma, the combination, amalgamation, if you want to call it, or combination of the Jivatma, individual soul, and the universal soul. Because our individual soul is connected to the universal soul. When we're connected to our own individual soul, we are also connected to the cosmic soul. That's the kind of a relationship. So, and this is why marmas can not only support physiologically and psychologically and emotionally and sensually, they can also support sattva, rajas, and tamas coming from the light of the soul. That means that Marma Therapy we can use to clean. I talked about it last week or the week before. Talked about the Sattva Vijay, the cleaning of the light of the soul. So we can use Marma Therapy also to help clean the light of our soul brighten the light of our soul. Remember, I talked about the three powers, like a high light, medium light, and a low light. So we can also use Marma Therapy to clean our light and make our light brighter and more expansive, and also help that light go to the mind, and to the heart, emotional heart, and also to the senses. So I'd like to summarize. I'm going to talk about the Transdermal Marma System in a moment, but to summarize what I just spoke about, Vaidya Mishra's father, his name was Kameshwar Mishra, who he learned after his 6 years of grueling Ayurvedic studies in the Ayurvedic college. He studied 7 years with his father, one-to-one internship with his father. So his father, Kameshwar Mishra, said, when you take care of the marma, you're taking care of the nadis because of the pranic flow. And you're taking care of the sandhis. You are taking care of everything when you take care of the marma. I haven't defined what a sandhi is yet, but a sandhi, Vaidya Mishra calls it a gap, and it's too deep it's even more complicated. So one day I will talk about a sandhi, but basically these are the it's called a gap. We have numberless sandhis or gaps in physiology and in the mind and everywhere. They're basically, the gap is where two nadis come together. It's called a sandhi, where things meet. It's a vibrational gap. It's not a physical gap. It's like a vibrational space where the transformation happens of one kind of pranic energy getting transformed to another kind of pranic energy. And again, these are all over. These gaps are all over, but they're basically where different nadis meet. And there's an exchange of information and intelligence from one nadi to another nadi. And it all happens in these, where they meet, the gaps. So they're not marmas, but I know it can be confusing. So I'll leave sandhi, deeper discussion of sandhi to another talk. But I want to bring it back down to a little more concrete now. So what is the Transdermal Marma System, which was, we call it TMS for short, and this is a system of Marma Therapy developed by Vaidya Mishra. And why did he develop this therapy? Because due to the importance of Marma, and due to the fact that there are so many etiological factors of out there that imbalance the marmas, such as electromagnetic pollution, emotional and physical traumas, internal toxins, external toxins, environmental toxins, so many things from the environment, as well as, again, from our own stress, that because stress is a big disruptor of the marma, whether it be a physical stress, emotional stress, or emotional stress. All these things disturb these vital energy points. And when they get disturbed enough, then imbalances of the doshas happen, and the chain is started, where we come up with a disease. Because of all these factors, Vaidya Mishra saw a need to talk about marma, but not only talk about them and teach what they are, but also to create a very useful, very practical, yet easy to learn system of Marma Therapy. And he did that. And then he went out, traveled all over the United States and Canada, and he taught this system to chiropractors, to doctors, naturopaths, massage therapists, other healers, and just people that were interested in what he had to say, whether they were a practitioner of any sort of medical system or whatever they were. And he has, because Vaidya Mishra was very generous, that he didn't, even though it was very, deep knowledge, which is best used by a health professional, he wanted everyone to have knowledge of it and be able to use it at least for themselves. So he taught it to anyone who was open and willing to learn it, his Transdermal Marma system. And then after he gave up his traveling, he would have many, many courses at the Prana Center in Chatsworth, California, because traveling was just too taxing at some point, as he was doing so much. He needed to stay in one place and have people come to him, which indeed did happen. People from all over the world came to these Marma courses. And so again, his Marma therapy is called the Transdermal Marma System. So what it is in a nutshell, and what are the benefits? I'm going to try to read this exactly as I wrote it. The Transdermal Marma System is a highly effective system for addressing physical, mental, and psychosomatic imbalances through the ancient science of Marma Therapy, used in conjunction with Prana encapsulated herbalized creams, transdermal delivery of different herbs and spices, that sort of thing. And these creams, which were formulated for general purposes and specific imbalances, specific organs and systems. Like he made a kidney transdermal cream. He made things for the lungs. He made transdermals for the heart. He made transdermal creams for the genitourinary system. So many different things for the brain, etc., for the eyes. And Vaidya, actually, he taught hundreds of people, if not thousands of people over the many years. He was very busy teaching this course. The first course I took was in Canada, Sarnia, Canada, with him and about 35 other people from across the US and Canada. And in fact, I was fortunate enough that he worked on me as a demo on the table in front of all these people. And I remember specifically, he was working on my spine, Marma on the spine, and I was trying to stay conscious, as it were, awake, to learn. But I had to let go. I went out. I totally was gone when he started. After a few minutes that he started working on me, I was just gone. And then when I came to, I sat up on the table, and he says, "How do you feel, James?" And I said, "Wow, I feel great, Vaidya. I feel like I have so much energy." He said, "Look at his face. It's glowing. It's just glowing." And that evening, I had to drive a rental car from Sarnia to Detroit, Michigan, catch a flight to LaGuardia Airport in New York, and then drive where I parked my van back to New Jersey. And I just had tremendous energy after that. I felt incredible after he worked on me. So what he did, he started teaching just this basic. He called it TMS Level 1. We don't really call it that anymore, but it was called TMS Level 1, which basically he taught how to enliven a set of 27 Marma on the body. We have 107 Marma, but he said if we can just work on 27 Marma in the right way, we can basically get the benefit of working on all 107. We don't need to work on all 107. These 27 Marma will take care of everything. Whatever, it's a broad spectrum Marma therapy. We can take care of almost everything working on these 27 Marma. So that was called Transdermal Marma System Level 1. And I don't remember the exact sequence, but later on he did add additional advanced Marma techniques and therapies. He has one called the Kurma Nadi, which is just working on the belly button area. There's a very powerful nadi there called the Kurma Nadi. And the Marma itself is called the Nabi Marma. Nabi means the belly button. But there's like a powerful soma, reservoir of soma, where it stores soma in that area. And that's called the vibrational turtle. We call it the Kurma, means turtle. So he introduced that therapy. And then he introduced spinal Marma therapy. And then we have some other therapies, but those were the basic ones that he he taught starting with the basic 27 and then adding these advanced courses later after you learn the basics of the level 1. But today, because I know after this, people seeing this talk, you might be asking, well, I would love to learn this myself. And you can learn this yourself. It's not hard. You just have to have a good teacher and good guidance. So the best way to learn it today, Vaidya Mishra is not with us anymore. And so what his wife, Dr. Takvorian, has done, she's put all these different Marma therapies on her portal called the Teachable.com website. And specifically, it's SVA Ayurveda Teachable. You can just type in SV Ayurveda Teachable, get directed to that website. In here, you can learn the basics of Marma therapy, and you can learn more advanced Marma therapy, the Kurma, turtle treatment, as well as the facial Marma. You can also learn about Pada Marma, the foot Marma therapy. You can learn about eye Marma therapy, Netra Marma. So you can do all these little add-ons as in addition to the basic 27. And you can learn spinal Marma therapy. And you can learn this beautiful vibrational cleansing technique, which we all need this day and age to take care of EMF. And so what you will specifically, you're going to learn how to identify the Marma, their names, the names of the Marma, where they're located, what their size is, what their function is, where they're located, and how to locate, not only where they're located, but how to locate them. And you will learn what these Marma do, what are their effects, what each Marma's effect is on the mind, on the body, on the senses. And so it's a great, we put together a wonderful Marma course on Teachable, all these different aspects, and there's lots of diagrams, there are lots of charts, there's lots of very specific information to guide you step by step in learning the Transdermal Marma system, the basic and the advanced therapies. So I'd like to talk a little bit now. It's going to try to take me 5 minutes to wrap up. One of the features of the Transdermal Marma system is it's not just touching the Marma. That's what most people do. They have a way of touching Marma. You got to understand there's a lot of people with different Marma therapies. Even where Marmas are located, there are some disputes between different practitioners. But one of the main features, which will set apart TMS from other forms of Marma therapy, is that it combines and it integrates 5 complementary therapeutic modalities. And Vaidya Mishra took these 5 modalities of Ayurveda, they're Ayurvedic modalities, and he combined them into a single protocol. It's not like you do one therapy and another therapy. No, they're all seamlessly combined. And when you use one, you use all the others. So when you use one of the modalities in the Marma system that he developed, you're using all the modalities, which will multiply and amplify their individual effects, because they all have their individual effects. Each component overlays and complements the other component. So what are these synergistic components of the Transdermal Marma system? One is called Transdermal Ayurveda. And the Sanskrit word for that is called Twak Sangrahan Vidya, the knowledge of transdermal absorption. Twak means skin. There's a whole science behind this. I'm not elaborating tonight, but there's a whole science of how what we put on the physiology enters the physiology and affects the physiology. There's a whole knowledge behind that, and that's using that knowledge is how Vaidya Mishra made his transdermal creams. He didn't just use his mind. There was textual information in the ancient texts to tell him how to do it. And then there's aromatherapy. Everybody knows about aromatherapy. Well, Ayurveda is the mother of all healing. So aromatherapy started with Ayurveda. And in the text, we call this sugan, which means pure smells, pure odors, pleasing, pure aromas. We call it sugandh vigyan, the knowledge of aromatherapy, of aromas, pure aromas, because that's what we want to use. And sugandh chikitsa. Chikitsa means the therapy. So there's the knowledge, and then how do we apply that knowledge? Applying the knowledge is chikitsa. So it's the understanding of the aromas and what they do and what they are, and what kind we should use and what kind we should not use, and also their therapeutic effects and which situations we can use them for. So then we have touch therapy, even though Marma itself is touch, but there are types of touch therapy that aren't Marma, like massage and what else? Acupressure. There's so many different types of touch therapies. So it has its own category. And we call it Sparsh Vigyan. Sparsh means touch. The seat of touch is in the skin. And again, Chikitsa, Sparsh Chikitsa is how we apply that knowledge. And then we get to Marma Therapy, Marma Vigyan, and Marma Chikitsa, the application of the knowledge. And then the fifth component is sound therapy. A lot of people know and have experienced different forms of sound therapy. Started with Ayurveda, and that knowledge is called mantra vigyan. Those subtle packets of vibrational energy, which, when properly understood and applied, produce a specific known effect on the environment or on the physiology. So again, he incorporated sound therapy. There's a mantra we use when we work on when we're doing our touch on the Marma. We use a certain mantra to amplify the benefits of the Marma therapy. But again, you don't have to think about, well, how do I do all these 5 things? No, it's just integrated into one package. Apply a transdermal cream. It has aroma, pure aroma, sugan. Could be lavender, it could be sweet orange, could be rose, it could be lime, it could be a lot of things depending on why and for whom we're using that cream, which aroma and what goes into which cream. If it's for the heart, we might use rose in that aromatherapy because rose balances, uplifts our heart, our emotional heart, and uplifts our emotions. Another cream might not have rose because we're using it for some different purpose. So the Transdermal Marma system, when you learn it, you don't have to think about all the components that much separately. A little bit when you learn the mantra, because you focus on learning the mantra, then you start using that when you start doing the therapy on someone. So you need to know the mantra, and then you know how to use the cream, how much to use the cream, and what cream should go where. That's important. A lot of details of the Transdermal Marma system, but definitely not hard to learn. And a lot of people are enjoying the benefits either for themselves. A lot of practitioners are getting wonderful results. I'll tell you I'm going to wrap up, but I'll tell you a quick story how Vaidya Mishra even started with this. There was a chiropractor in Bethesda, Maryland, he used to visit and see his patients. And a lot of fibromyalgia patients. And he said, Vaidya Mishra, these people, they need help now. They're not going to wait for, don't eat the nightshades, don't eat the potatoes, the tomatoes, the eggplants, the bell peppers. It's going to take time, and, they're desperate. They need help now. And he said, and Vaidya said, well, I did my research, and I was trying to find reference to something like fibromyalgia. And he said, and Dr. Beach told him about the trigger points, how they used to say it, these trigger points that are tender and so forth, how they come up with a diagnosis as fibromyalgia. And he said, oh, trigger points. Yes, these are Marma. Marmas are damaged. And that's where he got this idea. One of the first creams he made was this cream called Super Sport. We call it Prana Flow now, to help Dr. Beach's fibromyalgia patients get immediate relief from their pain and discomfort. And from there, he developed many more transdermal applications for many different problems and for overall health. So that wraps up.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jim. That was, hold on a second. Let me just put on the video. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you, Jim. That was really a lot of knowledge there. We are almost at the top of the hour. So if there are any questions, Linda, I know you've joined us on the video, so I'm not sure if you have any questions for Jim. Otherwise, I think we'll just figure out what we're doing next week, and it's a wrap.
What do you want to save some questions that you might have for next week?
I think we can have. I think next week we can. I'm thinking that there's a lot of questions here that I think I would definitely have.
Yeah, I would.
How would that be? You want to start with that?
Up to you. If you want to take one question now and do the just.
Yeah, I think we'll wait for questions because I have a lot of questions, and we could probably do a whole session on just continue our discussion on Marma Therapy. That's how I feel. How do you feel about that, Jim?
All right, I'll have something prepared in case we.
Yeah, you can have something prepared if we run out of time, but I don't think we're going to. I think there's a lot of information here that we can maybe. I'm sure a lot of viewers will have questions as well, similar to what I'm thinking of.
Right, and when you send out the recording link, then you could mention, okay, when you watch this, if you have questions, we can answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. So, all right. Well, so we're concluding the Ayurveda Cafe for this evening, and I'm going to stop the recording. But
what's the website for the Marma course? I see that it is.
Yeah, is
I don't know the exact. I don't know the exact. What do you call it?
Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can find the URL while we're online.
Yeah, it's SV Ayurveda Teachable. I think they have it SV-Ayurveda.
Can you also just find it on SV Ayurveda, and then it'll bring you to the.
It might be. I would put in the Teachable though.
Yeah, I think if you go to SV Ayurveda, you will see there's a tab at the top of the navigation menu for courses, and I believe you'll find.
I don't know
if
they have that, but I don't know if they have the courses for Teachable posted.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can find that. .com Teachable. Yeah. I think if you check out SV Ayurveda, you will find it. svayurveda.com. So, and we'll follow up with the exact link to that next week as well.
But it is on for sure SV Ayurveda. If you add the Teachable to it, you'll find it for sure. The other way, I probably, but I'm not sure.
Okay, awesome. So we'll call it a wrap. I'm going to start.